For the teenagers studying at St. Jude's Academy in Warminster, the end of exams in the fifth form provided an opportunity unlike anything they would have experienced had they attended any other school. Their GCSEs were over and completed before half-term, which was deliberately scheduled later than usual in the summer term. Whilst the rest of the school went off on an outdoor activities week, the boys and girls in the fifth form stayed behind to take part in a unique lifestyle project. What made St. Jude's so different from other schools was that, when aged around 15, all pupils spent a week living and studying as the other gender. Rob Harris was one of those pupils. He breathed a sigh of relief as he walked out of his final GCSE exam. He thought he had done reasonably well, hopefully well enough to be able to take the A-levels necessary if he were to pursue his dream career in medicine. Until this moment, all his energy and attention had been focused on his exams. Only now was he able to start getting his head around what the forthcoming half-term holiday would bring. The school deliberately did not make a song and dance about the gender swap program, preferring to let students enter it with an open mind. Of course, everyone knew it happened, and the project was a source of much sniggering amusement among the younger children who hadn't yet quite grasped the fact that they, in due course, would come to participate themselves. On the Friday before half-term, coaches pulled up outside the school and all the pupils, other than those in the fifth form, climbed on board. The fifth formers looked on enviously as rucksacks, walking boots and wet weather gear were stowed in the bus's lockers. They would have much preferred to be going off with the others than going through the gender swap program. Once the buses had departed, the remaining students and teachers filed into the hall. There were 2 classes in the fifth form at St. Jude's, so about 70 pupils in all, half boys and half girls. When everyone was seated, the head teacher, Ms. Brownlow, got up onto the stage and started to explain what the coming week would entail. As you know, she started, it has long been the policy at this school to ensure that, as part of your social education, all you boys learn what it's like to be a young woman and, similarly, you girls get a chance to flex your muscles as a man. This small joke invoked a burst of nervous laughter which helped relieve the tension. We believe it is vitally important that if you young people are to take your proper place in society, you understand and respect the needs and drives of the opposite sex, Ms. Brownlow continued. To that end, you will each spend the week learning skills and behaviors appropriate to the opposite sex. You will dress, study, and socialize exactly if you were a member of the other gender. Your lessons will be very gender-specific, indeed so politically incorrect that we had to get special authorization from our governors to go against equality legislation. You boys, now girls, will learn cooking and needlework, whilst the new boys will have classes in woodwork, car maintenance, and other similar masculine topics. I know it all sounds very strange and somewhat scary, but we teachers will be here to help you and to go through the process alongside you. Thus, after this meeting, I will become Mr. Brownlow for the week, and I expect you to address me as Sir. Mr. Adams will become Don, Miss French, Charles, Miss Ackland, Peter, and Mr. Mithenroyd, Sylvia. For this week only, it will be perfectly appropriate for you to address them by their new first names. This announcement produced another round of giggles. All the students were trying to imagine what sort of woman tubby Mr. Mithenroyd would make. Now, in order to help each of you to get into role as quickly as possible, we have introduced a buddy system. Each of you will be put into a boy/girl pairing so that you can help your buddy deal with any immediate issues arising from your change of sex. Mr. Adams Don read out a list of names and the students moved around to sit next to their buddy. Robert was pleased to discover he had been paired with Sally Sanders, a girl in his class with whom he got on well. Sally leaned over towards him. "Are you looking forward to this next week, Bobby?" "I know I am. I love being a girl, but you guys always seem to be freer and more relaxed. I'm looking forward to experiencing that, as well as seeing how you boys cope with all the restrictions that apply to girls." Robert replied, "To be honest, I'm a bit scared and excited at the same time. This week is a bit of a rite of passage for all of us, and it is awesome to know we are following in the footsteps of so many other kids who have been through this experience in the past. Listen everyone, the head teacher called out, "It is time to get dressed in your new clothes." Will the new boys accompany Charles and Peter to boys' changing room, whilst you new girls go with Dawn and Sylvia to the girls' one? Everyone shuffled out of the hall. Robert was surprised to see how much cleaner the girls' changing room was compared with the one he usually used. No sweaty trainers or jockstraps hid in corners, and that unmistakable changing room pong was missing. Sylvia called out names and gave every new girl a whole doll containing their new clothes. Robert's name was called out as Roberta Harris, and everyone was given a new girl's name. "First off," announced Sylvia, "I want you all to take a shower. In your bags you will find a bottle of special shower cream. This will remove, temporarily, your body hair. So I want you to make sure you use it on every part of your body except your face and head unless you want to be bald for the next few months. Rub the cream in well, wait a few minutes until your skin starts to tingle and then wash it off." Roberta stripped of her male clothes and headed into the showers along with everyone else. The cream smelt pretty disgusting, but he applied it as directed and, after about 10 minutes, felt her skin start to burn. Quickly rinsing it off, he watched with horror as her sparse body hair flushed down the drain. Toweling dry felt subtly different on the newly smooth skin, particularly as they had been given soft, pink bath sheets in place of the rough old towels they normally used. Wrapping the bath sheets around themselves, the girls returned to the changing room. Whilst they had been in the showers, Dawn and Sylvia had changed their clothes and were now resplendent in skirts and heels. They had even found time to put on makeup, jewelry, and wigs. Dawn was wearing a pale gray, sleeveless sheath dress, whilst Sylvia wore a pale blue blouse and pleated navy skirt. To Roberta's surprise, both teachers looked very realistic in their new female roles. "First lesson, girls," called out Sylvia, "you should all be wearing your towels wrapped round your chests like Roberta, Christine, and a few others, not round your waists. Get them in place at once." Shamefacedly, those who weren't correctly attired adjusted the position of their towels. "It is now time for you to get acquainted with your new clothing," smiled Dawn. "Panties first, I think." Roberta reached into his bag and drew out a pair of pale pink knickers, high-waisted, with lace trim on the front. Somewhat embarrassed, he stepped into them and gingerly pulled them into place under cover of his towel. To his surprise, they were surprisingly comfortable, and once he had tucked back his private parts, he presented a smooth female V at his crutch. "Maybe this won't be so bad after all," he thought to himself. "I guess that if I am going to get the most out of this week, it is about time I stopped thinking of myself as him and started becoming her. So, without more ado, she dropped her towel and stood there in her clean pink panties. "What are these, sir? Sorry, I mean miss," one of the girls called out, holding a couple of round things in her hands. "Ah," said Dawn, "those are your breasts. By 15 most young women have them, as no doubt you have noticed, Charlotte. So it is only right you experience them also. Now we are going to glue them on, so that they can remain in place for the whole week." The next half hour was taken up with Dawn and Sylvia helping glue the breast forms to young male chests. Roberta was surprised how heavy they were and was relieved when Dawn explained how to put on a bra. After some fumbling, she managed to fasten the clips of her white bra and then stood looking down at her own cleavage. It felt very strange. As a boy, she was entranced by the budding breasts of her girlfriends, and now she had a pair of her own. Tights were the next challenge, and Dawn and Sylvia had to hand out several replacement pairs before everyone was attired in unladdered, mid-tan hose. The white, girl's blouse with its Peter Pan collar and short, puffy sleeves wasn't that difficult to put on once you got used to the buttons being on the wrong side. Getting into a skirt felt odd, but, once on, didn't feel too bad, and, secretly, Roberta thought his legs looked rather nice peeking out beneath the green, pleated uniform skirt. The green blazer with the white piping wasn't so different from the one he wore as a boy except, once again, for the fact that the buttons were on the wrong side. Finally they got to the shoes and Roberta slipped her feet into a pair of black pattens with a little heel. All the girls stood around laughing and joking about how peculiar each of their friends looked. Dawn and Sylvia knew this was the standard embarrassed reaction at this stage of the week and allowed them to josh about for a few minutes before calling everyone back to order. Nearly there, Sylvia announced, "Just your hair to deal with now." Dawn arrived with a tray of wigs on stands. There were many different colors and styles and the girls were invited to pick the one they thought would suit them best. Roberta picked one that was curly, fell a bit below her shoulders, and was blonde with auburn highlights. Sylvia helped her fit it in place. The school rules did not allow girls to wear makeup or jewelry, so they were now fully dressed and ready to face the world in their new roles. Taking a deep breath, Roberta let Dawn and Sylvia usher her, along with the other new girls, back into the hall. The first sight that met their eyes as they entered the hall was a gaggle of smartly dressed, embarrassed boys standing in the middle of the room. Roberta drew a breath as he wouldn't have recognized any of her female friends in their new garb. They were totally convincing as boys, with their hair constrained under short wigs. The only thing that struck a slightly wrong note was the fact that they were all too tidy. Ties were neatly knotted, not hanging slackly below the top button, shirts were crisply tucked into trouser waistbands, not spilling out and hanging loose. Female habits of tidiness had obviously carried through to their new roles. It was at this point that Roberta suddenly realized that if the girls could look convincing as boys, then, he and the others probably looked equally good as girls. Roberta made her way over to Sally or Stan as he now introduced himself. "How do you feel about this now?" she inquired. "Not too bad," Stan replied. "It isn't probably as strange for me as it is for you. After all, I am used to wearing trousers, but I guess this will be your first experience of a skirt. The most uncomfortable thing is the elastic vest they have given us to wear so as to hide our boobs. It is really tight, but I guess I am going to have to get used to it for the next few days." "Listen, children," called out Mr. Brownlow, who was now dressed in a dark gray man's suit with a white shirt and striped tie. "Gather round and I will explain what happens next." The children moved closer to the stage. "It is time for you to go home now. Your parents have all received a letter briefing them on the week's program, so they are expecting you to arrive dressed as you now are. They have been asked to ensure you remain and enroll over the weekend. I will expect to see you back here at 8:30 Monday morning and we will get started on your new gender experience lessons. My advice is to try and enjoy the experience of living as the opposite sex. The more you enter into your new roles, the more you are going to get out of the program. Good luck." Everyone felt nervous about venturing out in public dressed as they were. Fortunately, Stan lived quite close to Roberta, so they were able to walk home together, giving each other moral support. Nevertheless, it was a very apprehensive Roberta who entered her home a little while later. "Is that you, darling?" called out Mrs. Harris as she heard the front door close. "Yes, Mum," replied Roberta, standing in the hall nervously tugging at her skirt. Mrs. Harris came through from the kitchen and paused, her mouth falling open in surprise. "I'm sorry, Mummy," cried Roberta. "Do I look that silly?" "Not at all, darling," replied her mother. "I was expecting you to come home dressed as a girl. It is just that I never thought you would look so beautiful." At this, both mother and new daughter burst into tears and fell into each other's arms. The crying Jag released all the tension Roberta had built up on her way home and, when she had dried her eyes, she was able to gasp, "Do you mean it? Am I really nice looking as a girl?" "Oh, my dear," replied Mrs. Harris, holding Roberta close, "you are the daughter I would have loved to have had we not been blessed with such a wonderful son." More tears ensued. Finally, the two of them pulled themselves together. "Your father is going to be amazed at your transformation," said Mrs. Harris. He has been so looking forward to seeing what sort of girl you would make. I am sure he will be as delighted as I am. Now, he won't be home from work for a couple of hours yet, so why don't you and I spend that time getting you out of your school uniform and into something pretty to surprise him? 2 hours to change clothes seemed a bit excessive to Robert, but, of course, he didn't know what would be involved now that he was Roberta, and pretty sounded a bit of a challenge. Still, go with the flow was going to be his motto for the week, so let's see what Mom has in mind. Mrs. Harris ushered Roberta upstairs and into her bedroom. It was immediately apparent that a few changes had been made whilst he had been at school. His football scarves and rock posters had been taken down from the walls and replaced with prints of bunnies and kittens, ugh. And a couple of posters of boy bands. I've noticed how cute some of those guys look, double ugh. The coverlet on his bed had been replaced with a lacy white one, and his old stuffed rabbit toy, which he had kept for sentimental reasons, but had stuffed away in his wardrobe, now had pride of place on her pillow. Most disturbingly of all, the mess that habitually covered his floor had been cleared away and, as a consequence, her room now looked cleaner and more spacious. Now slip out of that uniform whilst I run you a bath, instructed Mrs. Harris. Roberta stripped down to her bra and panties, but, for some inexplicable reason, felt reluctant to remove these last two garments. Mrs. Harris returned from the bathroom, where she had been preparing the bath. "Off with those, dear," she said, with a smile. "It's not as if I am unfamiliar with breasts, and your private parts have hardly been a secret from me since you were born." Reluctantly, Roberta removed her final garments and stood naked in front of her mother. "You have a very nice figure, dear mother. Now into the bath, but don't forget to take your wig off first." Roberta did as instructed and then climbed into the foaming bath. Mother had put in some sweet-smelling crystals, and, as she relaxed, Roberta mused that maybe there were some aspects of being female that definitely improved on the lot of the mere male. She luxuriated in the bath for a good half-hour before getting out and toweling herself off. "Remember to pat, not rub, dear," announced Mother. "Ladies do things differently from men." Once dry, Mother insisted Roberta wrap her towel above her breasts, rather than round her waist, as was Rob's habit. Once dry, Mrs. Harris passed Roberta a clean bra and panty set. "I bought a few things for you in anticipation of today," she announced. "Not too many, so that you can enjoy shopping for yourself, just enough to get started." Before long, Roberta was respectably clad in lemon-colored bra and panties, sheer tan tights, a burgundy-colored corduroy miniskirt, and a cream Angora jumper. Mrs. Harris produced a pair of black shoes with a chunky, 3-inch heel. "Girls of your age experiment with fashion," she announced, "so you ought to do the same and get the feel of what it is like to wear heels." Once appropriately clad, Mrs. Harris sat Roberta down in front of the mirror and told her, "I'm now going to show you how to apply makeup appropriate for a girl of your age. Take notice, because you are going to have to do it for yourself for the rest of this week." She applied eyeshadow, mascara, and lipstick. "At your age, less is more," she explained. "Young girls don't need much makeup, just sufficient to enhance their features." With her wig securely back in place, Roberta looked every inch the smart young woman. Mrs. Harris stared in amazement. "If I didn't know better, I could easily take you to be a real girl," she exclaimed. "Your transformation is incredible. I think you are going to have an interesting time this week." This last, somewhat ambiguous statement caused a slight frown to momentarily cross Roberta's face. "Come downstairs and you can help me prepare dinner," Mrs. Harris requested. The two of them went down to the kitchen, where Mrs. Harris passed Roberta a frilly full-length apron. "We don't want you getting any marks on that pretty new jumper, do we?" she announced. Roberta happily donned the apron. As Rob, his mother, had made sure he knew the basics of cooking and food preparation, but his actual involvement helping in the kitchen had been spasmodic and brief. Clearly, as the daughter of the house, Roberta was expected to be more involved. She started by laying the table and then prepared the vegetables whilst her mother made a Lancashire hot pot. It was about 6:30 when Mr. Harris arrived home. The two women had just about finished in the kitchen, and Mrs. Harris told Roberts to quickly take her apron off so that her father could meet his daughter for the first time in all her glory. "Welcome home, darling," Mrs. Harris called out. "Come and meet your lovely new daughter." Roberta tried to smile, but inwardly her stomach was tied up in knots. Would her father sneer at his sissy son all dolled up in skirts and heels? She need not have worried. Mr. Harris took one look at her and swept her up in his arms. "I've been waiting all day wondering how you would take to the gender program, and now look at you. My little girl is a true princess." Roberts was mightily relieved. She disentangled herself from her father's embrace. "Don't be silly, Daddy," she chided him. "I'm 16 and much too old to be your princess. This week I am going to learn what it is like to be a young woman, not a little girl." All three of them burst into laughter, and any residual tension was dissipated. Daddy asked Roberta to do a little twirl for me and complimented her on her poise and the way she handled her unfamiliar clothing. Roberta mused that somehow, as a girl, it seemed perfectly natural to think of her parents as Mummy and Daddy, although Rob had always addressed them as Mum and Dad. Mrs. Harris announced that dinner was ready, and Roberta hurried to bring through the food whilst her father opened a bottle of wine. As he was only 16, his parents discouraged Rob from regular consumption of alcohol. He wasn't allowed to drink during the week, but at weekends he was given a half glass of wine with his evening meal. Normally this was a red wine, but tonight Mr. Harris was opening a bottle of bubbly. "It is a very special evening, and I think we ought to toast Bobby properly," he announced. "So my family name is now Bobby rather than Rob," she thought. Daddy handed her a flute of fizz and declared, "To our wonderful daughter. May she enjoy this experience and learn from it, to Bobby." He and Mummy stood and raised their glasses whilst Bobby beamed with delight. They enjoyed a lovely meal, and Roberta was complimented on her vegetables. "Just right, dear," said her mother, "al dente and not overdone. You show real promise as a cook." After dinner, Bobby helped clear the table and load the dishwasher. They settled down together to watch television whilst Mr. and Mrs. Harris enjoyed the remainder of the wine. "Remember to smooth your skirt under you and keep your knees together when sitting," Mrs. Harris admonished. "I can see your knickers from where I am sitting, and no young lady would wish that to happen." Bobby blushed and rapidly adjusted her sitting posture. "You might find it helpful to try crossing your legs as I do," Mummy advised. "Most women naturally adopt this posture when seated." Bobby tried it and, although it felt odd, found she could sit reasonably comfortably with her legs crossed at the knee. When it was time for bed, Mummy accompanied Bobby up to her bedroom. "You will need to remove your makeup before getting into bed," she explained. "I have put out appropriate cleansers for you in the bathroom, but I thought that on this first occasion I should explain how you use them." Bobby took off her sweater and skirt and, clad only in her underwear, but this time without embarrassment, allowed her mother to clean her face. "Thank you," she said, "for having made this evening so special for me. I wasn't at all sure how you would react when you saw me dressed as a girl, but you and Daddy have been wonderfully supportive." Leaning over, she gave her mother a big hug and kiss. Something Rob would never have dreamed of doing. "It is my pleasure," Mummy replied. "I love my son, but it has always been a regret that I could only have the one child and that, therefore, you never had a sister or I a daughter. Just for this week we can put that right, and I am going to love having my gorgeous Roberta around." For not the first time that day, tears ensued. On going to her bedroom, Bobby found that her mother had laid out a nylon nightdress and matching panties for her. Eagerly she removed her tights, bra and panties and put them in her dirty laundry basket. She shivered as the cool nylon slid over her shoulders and down her body. "So much nicer than my usual boring old cotton PJs," she thought. However, once in bed she discovered a downside to being a woman. Her breasts kept getting in the way and she found it difficult to find a comfortable position in which to sleep. Eventually she did drop off and dreamed about all the changes that she had gone through that day. Chapter 2. The first weekend. Bobby was sound asleep at 8 a.m. the next morning when her mother came in to wake her. "Come along, sleepyhead," Mrs. Harris admonished. "It is 8 o'clock, and if you are not careful your girly Saturday will slip away from you." Bobby leapt out of bed and hurried to the bathroom. Mrs. Harris called out after her, "Your friend Stan has rung already. He was wondering if your brother, Rob, could lend him a few clothes for the week. He says he is sure his sister, Sally, will do the same for you. I have to say I think it is a very good idea. Loaning each other a few outfits will save all of us quite a bit of money." Bobby hopped into the shower and, whilst she was drying herself off back in the bedroom, returned Stan's phone call. "Brilliant idea," she said. "What sort of things do you think you might need?" "Not much," replied Stan, "a pair of casual trousers, a couple of shirts, a couple of tees, hoodie, trainers, and one smart outfit for church should do it. I won't need any of your underwear and socks because Mummy insists I must have my own new ones. Can you come over here with the things? It is relatively easy for me to put together a list, but you, as the girl in this deal, will need to choose a lot more." Bobby said he would be over in about an hour. True to her word, Bobby arrived at Stan's house before 10 o'clock. Mrs. Sanders, Sally/Stan's mom, let him in. "My, aren't you the pretty one?" she exclaimed. "Stan is waiting for you upstairs. I have told him that it is all right, on this occasion, for the two of you to try on clothes together. He has promised me that nothing untoward will take place and, if you give me your word as well, you can go up." "I promise, Mrs. Sanders," Roberta said. "This week is weird enough already without complicating it further." Mrs. Sanders smiled as Bobby hurried upstairs. "That boy should have been born a girl," she thought to herself. "He is much too pretty for his own good." Stan gave a girlish squeal of excitement when he saw the bulging bag Bobby was carrying. "Oh, I just adore trying on new clothes," he squeaked, "even if these are boring old boys' things." "Calm down," advised Bobby, "you are not behaving in a very masculine manner at the moment. You need to be cool and bored by the whole question of clothes." Stan apologized and the two of them unpacked the grip. In addition to the things Stan had asked for, Bobby had put in a pair of smart black trousers, his best brown leather jacket and matching leather tie, a pair of black lace-up shoes, and a belt. "I thought you might need a belt, he explained. "Although you are still pretty slim, you are starting to show a few curves and I guess your waist will be smaller than mine and your hips bigger." The Sally part of Stan blushed. "Oh, you've noticed, have you?" she teased. Now it was Bobby's turn to redden. "Let's make a start," said Stan. "The sooner we get me sorted out, the more time we will have on the fun bit of choosing your new outfits." He stripped off the clothes he was wearing down to his constricting vest, Y-fronts and socks. Bobby noticed that Stan was displaying a bulge in his underpants. Noticing Bobby's glacé, Stan colored up once again. "Mom thought I should show a little masculinity down there," he confessed. "It doesn't bother me," said Bobby. "I think it's cool. It is no different from my wearing false breasts and having to squeeze up my bits inside tight knickers." It didn't take long for Stan to decide that everything Rob was loaning him was fine and for the clothes to be summarily put away. The two of them turned their attention to Sally's wardrobe. "I won't need many clothes," said Bobby, looking aghast at the vast array of dresses, skirts and trousers hanging in the closet. "Don't be silly," riposted Stan. "For the next couple of hours I am going to revert to being Sally and I'll teach you a few important facts about being a girl, the first one being, you can never have enough clothes." She started pulling various garments off their hangers and piling them on the bed. "These will do to start with, I think," she said. "Why have you still got your sweater and skirt on? Get serious, girl. By the way, I think it is a really cute outfit your mom bought you." Do you really like it? Asked Bobby. It is very comfortable and I am starting to feel okay about it myself. She slipped out of her outer clothes and stood there clad only in bra, panties and hose. Sally, while still dressed as Stan, she was all girl for the present, handed her pink t-shirt with a kitten print on the front and a tight, black miniskirt. Once she had managed to wriggle her way into the tight garments, Bobby looked at her reflection in the mirror. An excited, shiny-eyed young teen looked back at her. She really was a natural for this cross-dressing lark. The next few hours were taken up with Bobby clambering in and out of a succession of outfits. Ones she and Sally approved of were neatly piled on the bed, whilst the discards were summarily dumped on the floor. By the time they had finished, Sally's bedroom looked as though a bomb had hit it. Am I really going to need all these clothes? Bobby asked anxiously, looking at the pile of approved garments. Probably not, replied Sally with a smile, but you are going to have great fun choosing what to wear. There is a fair chance that we will be encouraged to go out in the evenings this week as part of our gender program, and you can't be seen wearing the same thing twice. There was no way all the clothes were going to fit into Bobby's grip, so Sally asked her mum for the loan of a wheelie suitcase. Once everything was packed away and the bedroom tidied, Sally turned to Bobby and said thoughtfully, "You know, most of the clothes I have loaned you I don't really wear anymore, so don't worry about what happens to them, you don't have to give them back." "Are you sure?" replied Bobby. "They look fairly new to me. It seems a shame that you aren't going to wear them anymore." "I'm bored with them," smiled Sally, "and clearing these old things out gives me an excuse to buy new clothes." Bobby started giggling at this riposte. As Rob clothes shopping was a chore not a pleasure, he was certainly learning about the differences between boys and girls this morning. "Now we have sorted out your outerwear," Sally continued, "that just leaves the question of your lingerie. How much did your mom buy you?" "I'm not sure," replied Bobby. "Not much, I think. She said only enough to get me started so that I could enjoy shopping for myself." "Well, you will certainly need more than a couple of sets," said Sally. "You are going to be wearing at least 2 pairs of knickers a day, one for school and one when we go out in the evening. I think a trip into town is called for. I'll also need to pick up some more underpants and vests for myself," switching back into Stan mode. Bobby rang home and her mother confirmed that, indeed, she would need to buy some more lingerie. "Do you have any money with you, dear?" she inquired and, on Bobby confirming that she did, gave her permission for the two of them to go into town. "As it is Saturday, you need to look trendy going into town," Sally advised. "The skirt and sweater you wore over here will do just fine. You can leave the things you are borrowing here until we get back." Bobby had cycled over to Stan's house and his bike was in the garden. Stan took one look at it and said, "You can't ride that, it's got a crossbar and you are wearing a skirt. You will have to use my bike and I'll ride yours." Accordingly, the two young people swapped bikes and Bobby swung herself up onto Sally's pink one. She found it much easier to ride whilst wearing a skirt as, to be honest, she had experienced great difficulty keeping her skirt from riding up on the way over. Stan swung his leg over the crossbar of Rob's bike with great aplomb and they set off for town. "Where shall we start?" asked Bobby as they locked their bikes in a cycle rack. "Let's start with Marks and Spencer," replied Stan. "They sell both boys' and girls' clothes so we can each get what we need from the one shop." So they hurried off to Mann's and were soon in the lingerie department. "My stuff will only take a minute to find," said Stan. "Let's concentrate on getting you some pretty undies." It took, in Bobby's eyes, a remarkably long time to select 2 bras, 6 pairs of knickers, and a few pairs of tights. "You have got to have the right shade of tights to go with whatever outfit you choose," explained Stan, "and you simply must buy that pair with the seams up the back. You will look wicked walking down the street wearing them with my sorry Sallies. Black velvet miniskirt and patent heels. I've got a super pair with a 4-inch heel that Mummy doesn't know about. I'm not supposed to wear heels over 3 inches high. I'll loan them to you, but I will want those back afterwards. Bobby spent rather a lot of money on underwear that he would only need for 1 week. But, this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, right? So, make the most of it. As Stan had correctly predicted, it took much less time to buy him 6 pairs of underpants, 2 elasticated vests, and 4 pairs of socks. Now we have the essentials, we can enjoy window shopping, said Stan excitedly, in danger of slipping back into Sally mode. He caught himself just in time. What I mean is, he said gruffly, I don't mind wandering around with you for a bit if there are more shops you would like to check out. Bobby gave him a big grin. I'm sure I would benefit from any advice Sally's brother can give me, he said. Then let's go to Primark, Stan said. My sister shops there all the time and they have great fashion items at incredibly cheap prices. Primark was a revelation to Bobby. The store was full of young people, both boys and girls, as the shop also sold men's clothing, but naturally Bobby and Stan concentrated on the racks of girly things. Stan kept a pace or two behind Bobby but whispered advice as to things he thought would suit her. You just have to get that sequin top, he breathed, it is gorgeous and I would love to wear it when you have finished with it. The garment in question was a simple boob tube type top, cut square above the bust, and with little spaghetti straps. It was decorated all over with multicolored sequins and even to new girl Bobby it demanded to be purchased. Stan also directed her to the costume jeweler section where Bobby bought quite a lot of bangles and necklaces for a few pounds. She looked longingly at the earrings. I should really get some more earrings, she said sadly. Mom has loaned me these clip-ons but they don't go with the new stuff I have just bought. Why don't you get your ears pierced? Stan said excitedly. Lots of boys do these days so you won't look out of place once our gender program ends. Do you think I could? Responded Bobby. What would my mother say? If you've already got it done there isn't much she can do about it, is there? Replied Stan with a grin. So they hurried off to a jeweler's shop, and before long Bobby sported a pair of shiny studs in her ears. By the time they finally set off home, several pairs of pretty earrings had joined the pile of purchases in her bags. On arriving back at Stan's house, his mother, Mrs. Sanders, insisted that both young people model their new clothes for her. Needless to say it took Bobby a lot longer to show off all her purchases than it did Stan. Well done dears, said Mrs. Sanders when, at last, they had finished showing her everything, but Bobby, you are never going to be able to cycle home with all the things Sally is loaning you as well as these new clothes. I'll run you home in my car and you can put your bike in the back. At this point Stan explained that they had already swapped cycles for the week so that their transport was more consistent with their new image. Brilliant idea, said Mrs. Sanders, so Stan if you will just load Bobby's pink bicycle into the back of my car, we will set off. Stan huffed and puffed a bit as he struggled to lift the bicycle into the back of his mother's 4x4. Eventually, however, he succeeded. I didn't realize you boys had it so tough, he whispered to Bobby in an aside. It did not take Mrs. Sanders long to drive the two young people across to Bobby's house, and whilst she chatted with Mrs. Harris about what they each hoped their child would gain from the week-long gender swap, Bobby took Stan up to Robert's room and offered to loan him a few soccer posters and other odds and ends so that Stan would constantly be reminded of his new gender. Thanks, said Stan, shame we didn't think of this before we left my place, or I could have lent you some dolls and photos of male film stars. I'll drop them round tomorrow. The two mothers had by now finished their conversation and Mrs. Sanders called out to Stan that they were going home. The two friends promised to meet up again Sunday afternoon and to continue sharing ideas to help them make the most of the forthcoming week. When Bobby and her mother were alone, Mrs. Harris complimented Bobby on the way she was addressing the challenge of the gender swap. I think you have done extremely well so far, she started. To have gone out shopping for girls' clothes on your first day was very brave, although I can see that it helps when you have a friend like Sally, Stan, to help you. Now, if you are up to it, I think Daddy and I would like to take our new daughter out for a pizza this evening. How do you feel about that? Bobby shrugged. "I've decided to accept any challenge this week," she said. "After all, it is only for 7 days and is a once-in-a-lifetime experience." "Good girl," said Mrs. Harris, kissing her. "A positive approach can help you achieve almost anything, so I applaud your decision." Mr. Harris arrived home from his afternoon on the golf course shortly after and agreed wholeheartedly with the suggested outing. Mrs. Harris took Bobby up to her bedroom and helped her choose an appropriate outfit for the evening. "Smart but not too dressy," she advised. "I think this might do," she advised, holding up a black and white check kilt, a simple black tee with silver sequins around the boat-shaped neckline, and a white cardigan. "With black tights and those 2-inch black heels, you will look lovely. I'll show you how to apply an evening makeup appropriate for a girl of your age. I'm not letting any daughter of mine go out looking tardy." The two of them laughed together, and Bobby reflected that as Robert, he had never enjoyed such closeness with his mother. Bobby did indeed look lovely when Mrs. Harris had finished making up her face and brushing out her blonde wig. "Now go downstairs and chat with your father," she instructed, "whilst I get prettied up myself. I am going to have to take care or my son will be getting more admiring looks than I do, and that will never do." Roberta hurried downstairs. Mr. Harris was already dressed in an open-neck shirt, trousers, and sports jacket. He was sitting in the lounge sipping a gin and tonic. "How do I look, Daddy?" asked Bobby, giving a little twirl in the doorway. "Absolutely beautiful," her father replied. "Although I knew what was going to happen this week, I never could have imagined just how quickly you have settled into your new role. Now, as soon as your mother is ready, I will be proud to escort my 2 lovely ladies out to supper." It wasn't long before Mrs. Harris came downstairs, and soon the 3 of them were in the car driving to their favorite pizza restaurant. Robert was well known at Pizza Express, and the waiting staff all gave him amused grins as he walked in wearing her skirt and heels. "Don't worry, just ignore them," whispered their waitress. "I think you look lovely, and I guess half of those macho blokes wish they were in either your shoes or your knickers." Bobby blushed a deep red and lowered her eyes. As ever, the meal at Pizza Express was very good, and Bobby was allowed a small glass of red wine. Afterwards, they strolled through the town center for half an hour before driving home. Mrs. Harris enjoyed being able to window shop with her new daughter and to point out clothes that she thought would suit her. By the time they got home, Bobby was exhausted by all the excitements of the day and asked to be excused as she wanted to go to bed. Both her parents kissed her goodnight, which was something her father never did anymore for Robert. As she slipped into her nightdress, Bobby ran through all the things she had done in her mind and fell asleep dreaming of what might lie ahead on the morrow. Sunday dawned bright and fair, and Bobby was awakened by her mother bringing her a cup of tea in bed. "Wake up, sleepyhead," she admonished. "It is already 8:30 and you will have to get your skates on to be ready for church." Bobby leapt out of bed and into the shower. It felt strange washing with her breast forms sitting proudly on her chest. Once she had finished showering, Bobby rummaged through her collection of clothes trying to find something suitable to wear to church. Eventually she settled on a pale blue skirt suit, cream blouse, navy heels, with matching navy hat and gloves. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she thought, "Gee, I don't look half bad. I could get used to this." Rapidly shaking her head, Bobby tried to come back down to earth. This was for 1 week only, a lesson in gender differences, not a permanent change in lifestyle. Church went surprisingly smoothly. A number of cross-dressed boys and girls were there with their parents. After the service, family groups intermingled, chatting about the way their offspring were dealing with the gender experiment. Bobby managed to catch a few words with Stan, who promised to cycle over after lunch. At home, Bobby found that, as a girl, she was expected to help her mother with the preparation of lunch, something which as Robert would never have occurred to her. After lunch she asked her mother if she could change into something more casual and, having received her assent, ran upstairs and put on a pair of denim jeans, skinny fitting, and with a pink motif embroidered on the back pockets, together with a pink, V-necked, cashmere sweater and black flat shoes. As promised, Stan cycled over at about 3:30 and the two friends spent the rest of the afternoon in Bobby's bedroom, discussing how they might handle the forthcoming week at school and swapping tips about how to best present as a member of the opposite sex. When Stan/Sally finally went home, Bobby helped her mother put together a tray of supper and the family settled down to watch television. Bobby found, somewhat to her amazement, that she was really enjoying a romantic chick flick which, only a couple of days ago he would never have considered viewing. Monday was school day so, after another relatively early night, Bobby turned in. The gender swap program was going to start tomorrow and normally on school days Robert left it as late as possible before getting up, leaving himself only enough time to throw on his clothes, gulp down a cup of tea, and grab a slice of toast to eat as he walked into school. This Monday morning was different. The alarm went off at 7 a.m. and Robert rubbed the sleep out of his eyes, yawning as he wondered why he was waking up so early. Then he remembered today was the start of his week of lessons learning what it was like to be a girl. As he jumped out of bed, both the nightdress he was wearing and the bounce of his breast forms on his chest served as a reminder of everything he had experienced already during the last 2 days. Robert had only recently started shaving, as his beard growth was light. This morning he took particular care to give himself a close shave and, whilst in the shower, checked carefully to ensure that there weren't any stray body hairs which had escaped the application of depilatory cream he had used the previous Friday. There weren't. Once he had patted himself dry, Rob, switching swiftly into Roberta mode, stepped carefully into a pair of plain green cotton knickers. He took care not to ladder her hose as she rolled tan tights up her legs. A white bra, with just a little lace trim around the cups, gave support to her, surprisingly heavy, breast forms. After a weekend of practice, she found fastening the buttons on her white blouse much easier than she had on Friday. The green, pleated skirt and matching blazer completed her uniform and, slipping her feet into a pair of black shoes with a small stacked heel, she went downstairs. Bobby's mother had prepared breakfast for her. "My girl isn't going to walk to school chewing on a piece of toast," she said with a smile. "Just sit down there and eat your breakfast." Breakfast was a sliced grapefruit, a small bowl of muesli and yogurt, and a cup of tea. "We women need to constantly think about what we are eating," Mother explained. "If we aren't careful, our figures just get bigger and bigger. This is another lesson for you to learn this week: eat like a girl." As she approached the school gates, Bobby wasn't sure whether she was excited or scared, a bit of both, I guess, she thought. The other pupils from her year were slowly assembling in the playground. A few looked decidedly uncomfortable in their new clothes, but the majority, like Bobby, wore their uniforms in a natural, relaxed way. Bobby spotted Stan across the yard and walked over to him. "Thanks for all your help and advice over the weekend," she said. "It has certainly made coming in today easier than it would otherwise have been." "Don't be silly," said Stan. "That's what friends are for. Anyway, you helped me just as much as I helped you." And then Sally and Robert chipped in by loaning us some of their clothes. This little joke caused the two of them to subside into a fit of giggles, from which continued until the voice of Dawn Adams called them to order. The children filed into the hall and took seats in front of the stage. Their teachers, all appropriately dressed in their revised gender roles, sat on the stage. Mr. Brownlow, the head teacher, addressed them. "I trust you have all had a pleasant weekend adjusting to your new gender," she started. "Today your week of learning starts in earnest. You girls," gesturing towards Bobby and the other ex-boys, "will start with a lesson on how to apply makeup. Oh, I know we don't usually allow makeup to be worn in school, but this week is an exception. Meanwhile, you boys will learn what it is like to get your hands dirty by stripping down a car engine. Now off you go, and good luck to you all." As they filed off into their classrooms, Bobby reflected that this week's program had clearly been carefully thought out. It looked as though Rob was going to gain some unexpected new skills. Their classroom was set up with large mirrors on every table with an array of makeup products spread in front. Dawn Adams asked everyone to pair off and sit at a table. She then introduced Mandy Wright, a genuine girl and a beautician from a nearby salon. Mandy then explained the secrets of female makeup. She started by emphasizing the importance of less is more and explaining why some color palettes suit one complexion but not another. She then showed them how to apply the different products and got them to practice on each other and then themselves. Naturally, the first attempts were pretty dreadful, but gradually, most started to get the hang of it, and by the time the lesson finished, Bobby was pleased to find that she could now apply a very reasonable, simple, daytime makeup. "I'll be back later in the week," explained Mandy, "to show you how to put on an evening look. In the meantime, keep practicing." It was now lunchtime and the girls rejoined the boys in the canteen. Bobby was amused to see that Stan had a smear of grease across his cheek. She pointed this out to him as they queued to get their lunch. "It was gross," Stan muttered. "Oh, the business of stripping down an engine was fascinating, but how you boys cope with filthy hands and broken fingernails all the time I just can't imagine." So saying, he ruefully looked at his hands and Bobby noticed that his nails, usually so well groomed on Sally, were chipped and broken. Stan sighed. "I guess they will grow back," he said. When it came to her turn to be served, Bobby was careful to avoid the burgers and chips and chose instead a tuna salad and a glass of sparkling water rather than a cola. To her surprise, she rather enjoyed the lighter lunch, as a result didn't feel stuffed when it came time to start their afternoon lesson. For the girls, this turned out to be needlework, and they were given instruction on the use of a sewing machine and how to use paper dress patterns. By the time the bell rang to mark the end of the school day, Bobby was tired but exhilarated. She had worked and concentrated hard, but, as a result, had learned 2 new skills. She looked forward to telling her parents what she had learned. Bobby walked partway home with Stan, who had also got a lot out of the day. His afternoon had been spent on the sports field playing rugby. "I'm fine with soccer," he explained, "and I know that girls do play rugby, but I haven't before and it is a pretty brutal sport. Still, I'm glad I have tried it once." Bobby's mother was thrilled when her son explained that he now knew how to apply makeup and, immediately, insisted he show her what he could do. At the end of Bobby's demonstration, Mother hugged her and said, "I am so proud of you and the way in which you are embracing this opportunity. You can't imagine now, but all this knowledge will come in so useful when you are dating in a few years' time." Tuesday morning found Bobby up bright and early, eager to get to school and see what the new day offered in respect of new experiences. The morning session turned out to be domestic science. Bobby got less out of this session than she had from the previous day's lessons, as she was already a fairly good cook, her mother being of the opinion that all young people needed to master the basic tenets of cooking so that they could always look after themselves. The afternoon proved to be more interesting. Dawn Adams explained that on the Saturday night of the gender swap week, it had become traditional to hold a formal dance. Girls will need to choose a party dress for the occasion, so this afternoon we will be studying the fashion industry and looking at how you decide what is going to work for you and what isn't. Bobby found it fascinating to pore over different fashion magazines and to learn how skirt lengths, colors, and materials varied from season to season depending upon the dictates of a few fashion designers who seemed, at any point in time, to control what women would wear. "This is ridiculous," she thought. "Why can't women make up their own minds as to what they look good in or not?" Still, it was a really interesting session and she was glad to have gone through it. "Maybe the fashion industry is one I might consider for my own career," she thought. "I'm good at art, design, and technology, and it seems as though the industry has more male designers than female." She filed the thought away for further consideration. And so the week progressed. Bobby had opportunities to learn how to play netball, write poetry, and, in one amazing day, care for babies. First thing Thursday morning, each of the new girls was fitted with a prosthetic belly which, as the day progressed, was inflated by regular additions of water. The point of the exercise was to simulate, in one day, what it was like to be pregnant. By mid-afternoon, the weight of the inflated belly pressing on her intestines was causing Bobby acute discomfort. She, along with everyone else, forever had to put their hand up and ask to be excused to visit the toilet. This is awful, she thought. I've only got to cope with this for a day, real girls have it for 9 months. By the end of the day, everyone had been delivered of their baby and had been taught how to change a nappy and administer a bottle. We will excuse you breastfeeding, Sylvia announced with a smile, but only because we haven't yet come up with a way to make it a realistic experience. On the Friday afternoon, each of the girls was asked to outline which of the different things they had learned had made the most impression on them. For Bobby, it was the brief experience of what it must be like to become pregnant. Very good, Roberta, agreed Dawn, and just remember that we weren't able to simulate the pain of childbirth for you and be grateful. Men have it so much easier than women when it comes to the continuance of the species. Saturday was the day of the formal dance. Bobby had been giving thought all week as to what she should wear. Naturally, she consulted Sally, the sister of her best friend Stan. Stan had it easy. All he needed to do was find a black dinner jacket that fitted properly and he was sorted. For Bobby, it was much more difficult. After a great deal of heart-searching and discussion with both her mother and Sally, she settled for one of the outfits Sally had loaned her the previous weekend. This comprised a short, tight, black velvet skirt, a sequined, sleeveless top in tones of bronze and gold, sheer, black-seamed stockings, worn with a suspender belt with the straps adjusted to their shortest position in order that the welts on Bobby's stockings should not be visible. Mandy's second makeup lesson was invaluable when it came to applying a sophisticated evening look that was still appropriate for a teenage girl. Bobby's ears, which she had pierced the previous Saturday, had healed sufficiently for Mummy to loan her a pair of dainty earrings. She had also given Bobby a sweet necklace comprising a gold heart on a thin chain. "This is a present for you, darling," she said as she handed it over. "It was Grandma's and I always intended to give it to my eldest daughter. As Daddy and I never managed to have a girl, it seems appropriate to give it to you tonight. In due course you can pass it on to your daughter. It is a genuine family heirloom." Tears were shed. When she was dressed and ready, Bobby came downstairs from her bedroom and entered the lounge where her parents were waiting expectantly. Daddy took a deep indraw of breath, whilst tears welled in Mummy's eyes. "Oh darling, you are so beautiful," she gasped. "Whilst I love my wonderful son dearly, you should really have been born a girl. You are beautiful, and your legs are to die for." Bobby was wearing Sally's forbidden pair of 4-inch, black patent heels. Daddy was lost for words and limited himself to giving Bobby a big hug. Bobby had arranged to go to the dance with Stan. No girl should have to go to an event like this without a gentleman escort. She didn't have to wait long before Stan arrived. He looked splendid in his hired black tie suit. In his hand was a box which he handed to Bobby. It contained a single orchid, which Stan pinned to the top of her dress. The presentation of a corsage moved Bobby deeply and she found herself close to tears. Somehow she regained control of her emotions. It would never do to ruin her mascara by crying. Mrs. Sanders had driven Stan over and took the young couple onto the school. They entered the hall hand in hand. It had been an amazing week, but it was rapidly coming to an end. "I'm going to miss my skirts and heels," Bobby whispered. "I've really come to enjoy wearing such colorful, lightweight fabrics. Going back to flannel and tweed holds no attraction at all." "I can understand that," responded Stan. "Nay, Sally, for my part one can't wait to get out of these itchy trousers and constricting ties and regain the freedom of skirts." By 8 o'clock all 70 of the Year 5 pupils were present in the hall, which had been decorated attractively for the occasion. All the boys were in black tie, whilst the girls glittered in a kaleidoscope of color. Bobby was pleased to see that all the faux girls had made a real effort to be pretty for the occasion. "You are definitely the prettiest girl here," Stan whispered in her ear, and Bobby found herself blushing with pleasure. Before the dance started, Mr. Brownlow got up onto the stage. "This is the last time you will see me like this," he started. "From Monday I will be Mrs. Brownlow again, and I warn you I won't take kindly to any jokes about my temporary change of gender." This last was said with a smile, and a ripple of laughter ran round the hall. "I just wanted to say how proud I am of each and every one of you, he continued. "You have all entered fully into the spirit of this week, and I salute you. I hope that it has been instructive and that you have enjoyed yourselves as well." A chorus of "yes sir/miss" ran round the hall, which caused a further outburst of laughter. "Well, I have some good news for you," continued Mr. Brownlow. "Monday has been designated an in-service training day for us teachers, so your half-term has been extended and normal classes won't resume until Tuesday. This gives you an extra day to put into practice what you have learned this last week. Now, enough talking from me, you have come here to let your hair down and enjoy yourselves. Let the dancing commence." Mr. Brownlow left the stage as the curtains parted to reveal a fashionable local rock band who blasted off into their first number. The dance was very enjoyable, although it took Bobby a while to get used to dancing in heels. Whilst she spent a large part of the evening with Stan, Bobby also danced with a number of other boys as well as Charles French and Peter Ackland. Both teachers were very complimentary on the way Bobby looked as well as the way he had handled himself during the week. "Every year we find 1 or 2 star pupils who really shine in this program," explained Miss French. "This year you are definitely one of our stars." "Thank you," said Bobby. "I have really enjoyed the chance to learn what it is like to be a girl much more than I expected." She blushed. "To be honest, I'm rather sorry the week is coming to an end." Miss French laughed. "Well, it doesn't have to end here, Bobby," she said. "You might be surprised if I told you that a large proportion of the male population enjoy wearing skirts from time to time. You might turn out to be one of those men, and there is nothing to be ashamed at in that," she hastened to add. "I have many male friends who cross-dress now and then, and that doesn't make them one whit less manly." Part way through the evening it became necessary for Bobby to use the restroom. "Excuse me for a few minutes," she whispered to Stan, "but I really do need to go to the loo." "Well, if you are staying in character you really ought to go with another girl," smiled Stan in reply. "However, as I can't accompany you, I guess you will just have to go on your own." Bobby hurried off to the girls' toilets where, to her amusement, she found a number of the other cross-dressed boys refreshing their makeup and generally primping and tidying their hair. In urgent need of relief, Bobby quickly found a vacant stall. She remembered that she should sit to pee. When she had finished her business, Bobby joined the others in front of the mirror and applied a fresh layer of lipstick. Stan was waiting for her with a glass of non-alcoholic punch when she came out, and the two of them took their drinks into the playground to get a bit of fresh air. They finished their drinks and were about to return to the hall when Stan turned to Bobby. "I meant it when I said you were the prettiest girl here, you know," he said, taking Bobby in his arms. The two young people kissed passionately. Bobby felt her heart pounding. As Rob, he had fancied Sally for a long time, but before this week their relationship had not been anything more than platonic friendship. Gender Week had, perforce, brought them much closer together, and Bobby sincerely hoped that once this one-off event had come to an end, that they might be able to continue to get to know each other better. "I've gone and smudged your lipstick," laughed Stan when they finally drew apart. "Now you know what we girls have to go through when our boyfriends become amorous. You had better go back to the restroom and tidy up before anyone notices." Bobby hastened to do as she was told. The dance finally came to an end at 11:30 p.m. and, reluctantly, Bobby and Stan left the hall to find Mrs. Sanders waiting for them with the car. "Did you have a good time?" she inquired, as they drove home. "Lovely, thank you," they both replied. "Well, don't forget you still have the weekend during which you can continue to enjoy your gender swap," Mrs. Sanders reminded them. "Come next week, you will both have to return to school dressed appropriately for your real gender." But until then, Mrs. Harris and I have agreed that we rather like having our new children around and are happy for you to enjoy another couple of days of role play." Both Bobby and Stan squealed with delight at this thoughtful suggestion and agreed, with alacrity, to staying in role for the rest of the weekend, plus, as they explained, the extra holiday they had gained on the Monday. What new opportunities might these additional 3 days offer? Not surprisingly, the morning after the dance found Bobby sleeping late. Eventually, her mother woke her with a cup of tea. "Time to get up. The morning is half gone," Mrs. Harris announced. "I have just had a phone call from Mrs. Sanders asking if she and Sally can come round this afternoon to return the clothes you loaned to Stan. We need to wash Sally's things this morning so that we can return them to her as well. I know you have only had a chance to wear a few of the clothes she lent you, so please sort out what you have used and we can then get the washing machine going. I know you want to remain as Bobby for this final weekend, but please limit yourself to clothes we have bought specially for you." Bobby leapt out of bed and took a quick shower. What to wear, she wondered. Lingerie wasn't a problem as that was all her own, but outerwear presented a bit more of a challenge. She really had little choice. In the end, she settled for the burgundy cord mini shirt and cream Angora sweater her mother had purchased for her first evening as a girl. Swiftly sorting Sally's clothes into piles of used and clean, she took the used pile downstairs and helped her mother sort them into appropriate loads for the washing machine. "We may as well wash your school clothes as well," Mrs. Harris must, "and then they will be ready for you to return on Tuesday." It didn't take that long to wash the clothes and soon they were whirling round in the tumble dryer. Mr. Harris was off playing golf, so Bobby enjoyed a light salad lunch with her mother, which, fortunately, they had just finished and cleared away when the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Sanders and Sally. Bobby was surprised to see Sally back in skirts. She had been expecting to spend these final few days with Stan. "Sorry, Bobby," explained Sally, "but when it came to it I just wanted to get out of scratchy old trousers and back into something pretty." "I can understand that now after this week's experience," confided Bobby. "I really am not looking forward to Tuesday. Girls can have so much more fun with clothing than boys." "Never mind," continued Sally, "you still have these last few days as Bobby and we can go out tonight as girlfriends rather than as boy and girl. It will be different from what else we have done this week and it will give me the opportunity to introduce you to a few more feminine secrets." The two young people explained what they were planning to their mothers, who readily agreed to them going out as girlfriends. "You had better hang on to one of Sally's dresses, Bobby," said Mrs. Sanders. "Your skirt and sweater outfit is very pretty, but if I know my daughter, and I do, she will want you both to wear something a bit dressier for a night on the town." "Oh, thank you," cried Bobby, and the two girls hurried upstairs to sort out what she could wear. "Nothing too extreme," cautioned Mrs. Harris. "You are both still only 16, remember." Sally and her mother drove home shortly thereafter and Mrs. Harris offered to drive them into town that evening. "It's my turn," she said. "I'll pick you up, Sally, at 8 p.m. Bobby helped her mother with a few household chores for the rest of the afternoon, but by 5 o'clock was fidgeting to get changed. Mrs. Harris smiled. "Go along then," she said. "I can still remember the excitement of getting ready for a night out from when I was a teenager." Bobby was a long time upstairs, and it wasn't until 7:30 that she finally came down. Her appearance quite took Mrs. Harris's breath away. Bobby had spent ages getting her makeup just right. It was appropriately sophisticated for a girl of her age and immaculately applied. Mandy's lessons at school had clearly been effective. She had also managed to style her wig so that most of the hair was swept up on top with just a couple of wisps framing her face. The dress Bobby and Sally had selected was stunning. Little spaghetti straps supported a shimmering confection of brightly colored chiffon over an underdress of black nylon. It was form-filling to the hips, where it swirled out into a frou-frou of frills. The skirt fell to some 3 inches above the knee, sexy but not tardy. Nude pantyhose and gold sandals completed the ensemble. For jewelry, Bobby had selected a pair of long dangly gold earrings, her grandmother's necklace, a slim gold watch of her mother's, and a gold chain bracelet also her mother's. "I hope you don't mind my riffling your jewelry box?" Bobby asked anxiously. "Well, it isn't a habit I would encourage," replied her mother, "but on this occasion I will overlook it as you look so lovely." The two women hugged each other and, once again, Bobby had to fight back the tears that threatened to ruin her carefully applied makeup. Mrs. Harris took a critical look at her new daughter's outfit. "Just a couple of things missing," she said at last, and, hurrying upstairs, returned with a sheer, black, nylon shrug and a gold clutch purse. "It can get a little chilly later in the evening and you might be glad of this," she advised. "Also, you will need a bag. Remember, you don't have pockets anymore, and this one will go beautifully with your dress and heels." By now Mr. Harris was home from his golf game and he too expressed approval and private amazement of the transformation of his erstwhile son into a beautiful young woman. "Don't get carried away tonight," he reminded Bobby. "Remember, you are still only 16 and not yet very streetwise. The last thing you need is to be caught out in your impersonation. I know it has been sanctioned by your school, but that won't help you if you get spotted as a boy by a gang of toughs." Bobby promised to be careful, and then she and Mrs. Harris drove over to Sally's house. Sally was looking gorgeous in an outfit of pale green silk that showed off her developing teenage figure to perfection. Mrs. Harris drove them into town and they agreed a place where she would pick them up at 11:30 p.m. "What shall we do this evening?" asked Bobby. "What about the cinema? There is a film on that I have wanted to see for ages." "That is a bit tame for our only night out as girlfriends," responded Sally. "Why don't we go for a drink at the White Fox?" The White Fox was a watering hole favored by the younger crowd because they often featured live music and weren't too fussy over age identification. "I'm not sure about that," said Bobby nervously. "We are only 16 and shouldn't really be drinking." "Don't be a wimp," challenged Sally. "I know it is difficult for boys to get away with pretending to be older than they are, but it is much easier for us girls. I'll bet you the price of our first round that, looking as we do, we get served without anyone asking to see our ID." Somewhat reluctantly Bobby agreed to Sally's suggestion and they clip-clopped in their high heels across the market square towards the White Fox. As Sally had predicted, they were not challenged on entering the pub, nor when they ordered their drinks. Bobby paid up without demur for 2 glasses of white wine. Of course, as Robert, he had secretly been into pubs before and would normally have ordered a pint of bitter, but this evening chilled Chardonnay seemed a more appropriate tipple. The two of them found seats in an alcove and settled down, sipping their drinks and observing who else was in the bar. They couldn't spot any of their classmates from school and concluded that the rest of their cohort had given up the gender swap experiment after the Saturday night dance. Nor spotting anyone they knew, Sally switched her gaze towards the male talent. "Don't you think those two are a couple of hunks?" she inquired, directing Bobby's attention towards 2 young men seated at the bar. The boys in question were clearly a few years older than Sally and Bobby and had shed their adolescent gawkiness and developed into a pair of very attractive young men. Even Bobby had to acknowledge that had she really been a girl, she might have been attracted to them. At this point the 2 boys noticed that they were being observed and commented upon by 2, apparently, pretty young women. With a leer they picked up their beers and sauntered over. "Are you 2 sweet cheeks here on your own?" one inquired. "If so, do you mind if we join you?" Without waiting for a response the 2 boys slid into seats on either side of Sally and Bobby. Bobby's initial reaction was one of nervousness and she glanced anxiously at Sally, who seemed unperturbed. "Hi guys," said Sally. "I'm Sally and this is my friend Bobby. What are your names?" The boys introduced themselves as Jake and Phil. The 4 young people started chatting and sparring as all boys and girls will. It didn't take long for Bobby to get over her fears and relax into the conversation. She found she was enjoying flirting with Phil, whilst Jake devoted all his charms towards Sally. "I haven't seen you here before," remarked Phil. "This is my first time in the White Fox," responded Bobby. "We normally go to another bar, but one of our friends recommended this one, so we thought we would try it out." "Just as well you did," leered Phil. "I think the four of us could get really friendly, don't you?" As he said this, Phil put his hand on Bobby's thigh. Bobby froze. Suddenly he realized he was in danger of getting deeper in than he had intended. It was one thing to prance around in a skirt and heels, flirting with attractive boys, quite another to have someone's hand on his thigh, creeping inexorably under his skirt. Unless he did something now, it was inevitable that very shortly his true gender would be identified, and goodness only knows what would happen then. The blood drained from Bobby's face and he rapidly stood up. "You will have to excuse me," he announced. "I don't feel very well. I think I am going to be sick." So saying, he pushed his way out of the booth and headed for the ladies. He hadn't taken more than a few steps before Sally was following him. "Don't worry, boys," he heard her saying. "I'm sure she will be fine in a minute and then we will rejoin you." The two of them went into the ladies, which, fortunately, was at this moment of time unoccupied. "What's the matter?" demanded Sally. "I was just starting to enjoy myself with Jake, although he isn't the sort of boy I would normally fancy." Bobby suddenly found he felt sick in earnest and rapidly went into one of the stalls where he promptly threw up. When he had recovered and washed out his mouth, he explained to Sally just how close he had come to being found out. "It was horrible," he sobbed. "I was enjoying myself and then suddenly everything got out of hand. I dread to think what would have happened if Phil had found out that I was really a boy. I suddenly realized that, whilst I like dressing as a girl, I just don't fancy boys. I like girls, and one girl in particular." This last confession was uttered in a shy voice with his eyes downcast. "Oh, I'm sorry," said Sally. "I guess I was getting carried away and forgot just how vulnerable you are. Look, there is a back door just down the corridor from the loose, so we can get out without the boys knowing." Bobby seized upon the suggestion and, pausing only to dry his eyes and refresh her makeup, the two of them left the safety of the ladies and hurriedly exited the bar. Fortunately, both girls had picked up their purses as they left the table, so there was nothing they needed to go back for. Once safely away from the pub, Sally opened her purse and took out a 20-pound note. "Emergency money," she explained. "Mom insists I always keep 20 pounds in my purse, unspent, so that I have money to get a taxi home in an emergency. I think we can describe this as an emergency, don't you, and justifiably a dip into my reserves?" Bobby agreed with her wholeheartedly, and, in no time at all, the two of them were safely ensconced in a taxi heading back to Bobby's house. Mr. and Mrs. Harris were surprised to see them home so early, and Bobby was forced to explain what had happened. Reliving the moment brought back her tears, and, swiftly, Mrs. Harris gathered her in her arms. "Time for bed for you, young lady," she announced. "Get yourself tucked up and I'll bring you up a mug of hot milk to help you sleep. Meanwhile, Sally," turning to the other girl, "Mr. Harris will run you home in the car." Bobby and Sally hugged tearfully, and then Sally left. Bobby hurried upstairs, undressed, cleaned off her makeup, and climbed into bed. True to her word, Mrs. Harris brought a cup of warm milk which Bobby sipped gratefully whilst she and her mother talked. "I'm afraid this is another lesson you need to learn as part of your gender swap week," Mrs. Harris said sadly. "Being a girl isn't all sweetness and light. Sooner or later you need to learn how to deal with unwanted advances. In your case it was sooner, but maybe that is no bad thing. You got away lightly and have learned a valuable lesson. Now go to sleep, my darling. I'm sure you will see everything will be in perspective in the morning." So saying, she gave Bobby a goodnight kiss and quietly exited the room, switching off the light as she did so. In spite of all her fears and excitements, Bobby promptly fell into a deep sleep. The following morning Bobby awoke much refreshed. She was slightly ashamed of herself for having been so easily frightened, but, deep down, realized that she had been running a real risk of discovery by going out on the town dressed in a way that was bound to provoke the interest of young men. That's it, Robert, now in command, thought. That is the last time I dress as a girl. The gender swap week was great and I both enjoyed and learned a lot from it, but it is over and it is time to get back to being a boy. So resolved, he climbed out of bed, stripped off his nightdress, and went into the bathroom. At the end of the final class on Friday, all the faux girls had been given a bottle of solvent to dissolve the glue holding their breast forms. The first thing Bobby did was to use this solution to remove his breasts. It felt strange, after a week, not to have the weight of boobs hanging from his chest, and he missed the constriction of a bra helping support them. But boys didn't have breasts, so the sooner he got used to the new sensations, the better. He washed his face carefully, making sure that all traces of makeup were removed. Then he used nail varnish remover to get rid of the deep pink enamel decorating both his fingers and toes. At one level he was sad to see the end of her feminine embellishments, but at another he was relieved to see it all disappear down the drain. Dressing in a simple t-shirt and a pair of his old, boys' jeans, he went downstairs. "Hi, Mom and Dad," he said, sliding into his chair for breakfast. "Bobby has gone and Rob is back. It's been a fun week, but it is time to get things back to normal." Mr. and Mrs. Harris swapped glances of mutual understanding and regret. They understood the pain their child was going through, but knew there was nothing they could do to help. It was something Robert had to get through on his own. Mr. Harris leaned over and gave Rob a hug. Rob drew back. "Hey, don't forget all that you have learned so quickly," Mr. Harris admonished. "I have enjoyed having a tactile daughter this last week and don't want to lose that closeness. There is nothing wrong with men showing their affections and emotions. It doesn't have to be just a female thing, you know. Now come over and give your old dad a hug." Grinning sheepishly, Rob did as was requested and found it rather reassuring to be enfolded in his father's arms. After breakfast, Rob went up to his bedroom and carefully folded all his female clothes into a neat pile. "What are you planning to do with those?" inquired his mother, who had been observing him from the doorway. "I don't know," replied Rob honestly. "I will probably ask Sally if there is anything she would like and then take the rest to a charity shop." "Don't do anything too precipitate," cautioned his mother. "Why don't we put everything into boxes and store them in the attic for a while? You might have got your thoughts more in order in a few days and you can take final decisions then." Rob wasn't sure what his mom was on about, but it was easier to agree than argue, so he went along with her suggestion. They had hardly got everything safely stored away in the attic when the doorbell rang. It was Sally, anxious to discover how Rob was following the excitements of the previous evening. If she was disappointed to discover that it was Rob at home rather than Bobby, she disguised her thoughts well. When she had ascertained that Rob was okay after a good night's sleep, she went upstairs with him so that they could talk privately. "Did you mean it last night when you said that you fancied girls over boys and that you had one particular girl in mind?" she asked tentatively. "Yes, I did," replied Rob. "And who was that girl?" inquired Sally, nervously. "Why, you, of course," said Rob with a laugh. "You never thought there was anyone I'd like better than you, did you?" His laugh broke the tension and the two of them fell into each other's arms and kissed passionately. Eventually they had to surface for air. "I will love having you as my official boyfriend," said Sally, "but, at the same time, I am going to miss my favorite girlfriend." "I'm sorry," said Rob, "but all that has to stop. I have loved learning what it is like to be a girl, but last night scared the pants off me. I have put all my girly stuff away and that is where they are going to stay." Sally was much too female an animal not to know when the time wasn't right to argue with her man. "Fair enough," she said. "Let's leave it there for now. Now, where are you going to take me tonight for our first date?"